Scrappin with Sheri and project recipe number 28. This one, I'm going to be doing kind of sideways with this page on this side and this kind of like it is. But when I looked at the directions, it says use 2 designer papers as the base. Well, I wanted to use these 2 papers, but I want to use them halvesies. So I'm going to be cutting these in half. These 2 are from the Welcome Baby collection. This one is from a Shades of Brown collection, but I like the way it went with those. And then I'm going to be using this border from the On the Mend collection with the hospital on it, because these pages are going to be pages for my new grandson when he was born and at the hospital when we went to visit him. So I hope that all makes sense to you. And the reason that I pulled the colors I did, I wanted to keep this kind of neutral because I haven't been to this hospital until he was born, and I didn't really know what colors the pictures would be, whatever. So I wanted to keep that kind of neutral. I didn't really want to bring in a lot of this teal color, and I felt like these colors corresponded well with the colors of the hospital. So that's my rationale in bringing these 2 in. So instead of using 2 sheets of designer paper as the base, I'm going to be cutting these 2 in half and then welding them together to make my own designer base. Now, one thing I did notice is that in the instructions, they have used a scalloped blade. Actually, I think it calls for the decal blade to cut these, and it kind of overlaps a little bit. My problem is when I weld these together, you're not really going to see that decal blade. So I'm not going to use it on this part, but I am going to use it in a second, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. Now, doing this particular method is probably one of my very favorites because you can take 2 papers and make a really nice background, but not be quite so boring as just having 2 plain papers there. And I like the mix and match look of this. Now, I'm going to weld these on the back side. And part of the reason that I chose these, aside from the fact that I like the really neutral, is these sides are not my favorites. I know a lot of you like the yellow and you think that's beautiful, and that's wonderful, but not one of my favorites. Now, I'm going to be using some photo tape to weld this today. I don't do that very often, but in cleaning out some things, I found a roll of old photo tape, and I think it will work still. I don't think it's lost the sticky, and all I've got to do is put that right along that seam and just not take off the adhesive backing. Well, the backing that exposes the adhesive. And I got a little long on that, but we're just going to trim that off with our scissors. And that piece is welded. Let's do the other side. If you're with me very much, you know I enjoy the welding. And I am going to do these kind of opposite of each other. I'm going to put the plaid on the bottom on one side, the top on the other side, and vice versa. Just for a little bit of variety. You can tell this is the really, really old photo tape because of the packaging. And Creative Memories does still have photo tape. I just don't tend to use it because I love my tape runner. But, you know, when you find stuff that's laying around and you just feel like you need to use up what you got sometimes. And that's what I'm doing here. And I do like the fact that it's good for welding. All right, great. So let's flip this over. And even if we went just as is, I think that's a nice layout already. And we could add some pretty mats, make it beautiful. But in looking at my sketch, they've added some borders here and then a big strip here. And that's what I want to use the darker brown for. Now, this blue bigger strip is a 5.5 by 12. And because we didn't cut this with our decal blade, I am going to cut this with the decal. So I'm going to pull my trimmer back over and switch out my straight blade for my yellow decal blade. And I need to just cut one little bitty edge off first, just so I have the edge on both sides of my paper. Now, I will caution you, when you're using one of the decorative blades, you typically don't want to slide back and forth. You need to make your first cut a good one, because if you slide back and forth, you're just going to shave off all the little pretty pieces anyway. So make the first cut a good one. And this is a 5.5. And I'm just going to add that right there. And I do think, because I didn't do that decal through the middle, I'm going to add just a little decal edge, just kind of as a binding on my seam, I guess. And I'm going to do that on this side, because the other side is going to have the big border anyway. And I did purposefully want this to go through the center. So let's add our decal edge, this, and this layout is almost through except for the pictures. Now I did finally get my 12-inch mats, 13-inch mats at my workstation, so I'm able to line things up a little more easily. And I say that, I also have lines on this paper, this plaid paper, that I could be lining up with, but I kind of messed that up as I laid it down. Now our sketch shows this going everything sideways, but because we're doing ours a different direction, I'm going to put this over here. And with this being 5.5, that just means I need to develop my pictures at about a 5-inch size. About a 3x5 will work. And then I can line photos up here. Or I could do 5x4s, whatever. But I'm going to have a lot of opportunities to add photos, particularly on this side. Now with this one, because this border is going to cover up my seam, I'm not going to worry about the brown over here. And I'm going to go ahead and add this with regular tape. A lot of times I would make these things pop up, but this one is so large, I don't really want it standing up. And when I put this down, I'm really just trying to make sure that my seam doesn't show, but somewhat centered on my page. I want to be able to put photos above and below. And I'm just centering that using the ruler guides on the sides of my mat. And then I think to carry my color over, I mean, I do have brown here and brown here, but I think I want to make some photo mats for that side. And I'm going to use the rest of this brown paper. I'm switching back to my straight blade. And I just need to cut that little decal edge off. Let's see what kind of width we've got. We've got a little more than a 5.5 there. And I'm going to leave that width for now. And I'm going to cut it into 4-inch sections, because I know that the 5.5x4 will work. Now that gives me, and I could cut this one down and then one larger one there. And I am going to cut this one down. Let's see, what's my width on that? That's a 4, so I'm going to make this one a 4x4 because I do like some square photos. And just to make my longer photos offset a little bit, I've scooted that over. So that gives me some good matting colors and very neutral matting colors, which is what I kind of wanted to go for before I saw the hospital. And we're just going to stick these mats down, and then we'll be ready to do photos. So how many of you take pictures of the hospital when you're just going there for a birth or to visit or whatever? I don't typically, but I've tried to be very mindful of taking pictures of all the little steps along the way. And I did have this, We Love Our Nurses. My daughter happens to work at the hospital where she gave birth, so it was very fun that a lot of her friends got to be there with her during the birth of her child. So I wanted to add this in for the We Love Our Nurses. And now our last step is to add our photos. So when I pulled my photos out and started putting them on the pages, it actually worked better to make these two pages opposite, to make the hospital border on the left side with the other pages on the right, the other pictures on the right. I did manage to make them fit into the designated spots that I had for photos, just layered 3 right here. I did have the We Love Our Nurses, and some of my daughter's friends came by to see the baby after he was born. I did add a hospital bracelet and then his vital information here. And I absolutely love this 2-page spread. I don't know what you think about it, but hey, it's my grandbaby, and I think this page is perfect. So, until I see you next time, happy scrapping.